The Whispering Wall. Some cities sleep, some cities listen, and some remember. Before the neighbors whispered it with a mixture of pride and pity, Adie was just a slip of a girl with a mop of stubborn curls and a voice that was quiet as a moth's wing in the moonlight. She lived in a soot-stained terrace tucked behind the railway lines, where the bricks were blackened and the air hung heavy with coal smoke and forgotten dreams. It was post-war London, and the city hadn't yet remembered how to breathe. The smog rolled in thick as porridge, seeping through the cracks in the windows and curling around the lamplight like ghosts that refused to leave. Day and night blurred into a single grey hush, and the streets wore their silence like a second skin. Her mama, Nora, was a woman worn thin by grief and laundry soap. She scrubbed other people's sheets in the basement's washhouse that stank of bleach and boiled cabbage, her hands red and raw, her back bent like a question mark. There was no man in the house anymore. He had gone with the war and never quite came back, not properly. Adie didn't ask, she knew better than to stir the silence. But Adie had her own world. She spread out envelopes across the living room carpet, the threadbare bits near the hearth where the coal dust settled. Each envelope had a name: Mrs. Weatherstone, Mr. Briggs, and baby Ellie. And she shuffled them like treasures, stamping them with a toy spoon and sliding them under imaginary doors. Her post office was grand. In her mind, brass counters, polished floors, and a bell that rang when somebody came in for a parcel. She called out in her best grown-up voice, "Next, please," and pretended not to notice the damp creeping through the skirting boards. It was in those moments when her knees scuffed and her fingers ink-stained from the leaky biro that Adie felt most herself. Not the girl with the absent father or the mother who's too tired to smile, but someone important, someone who delivered things that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of who she became. It was a rare day off. Nora had scrubbed her last sheet by noon and came home with a look that Adie didn't recognize. Something softer, like the war had loosened its grip on her for just a moment. She made tea, real tea, not the weak stuff with more water than leaf, and told Adie to put on her best coat. "We're going to St. Paul's Cathedral," she said, as if it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Adie didn't ask why, she just nodded, clutching her satchel like a talisman. The bust was red and tall and glorious. They climbed to the top deck where the window was streaked with soot and the seats smelled of damp wool and tobacco. London rolled past in shades of grey, bombed-out buildings, laundry strung like flags of surrender, children playing hopscotch in alleyways. But Adie only had eyes for her mother, who sat upright and quiet, her hands folded like she was holding something invisible. St. Paul rose out of the smog like a ghost in marble. Its dome was smudged by the sky, but still proud, still defiant. They walked up the steps. Nora's boots echoed like drumbeats, and they entered the hush. Inside, the air was different. It held its breath. They climbed again, this time the narrow spirals to the whispering gallery. The stone walls curved like a secret, and Adie pressed her ear to the cold surface. Her mother stood on the far side, lips closed to the wall. "Can you hear me?" Nora whispered. Adie's eyes widened. The voice came through the stone, soft and clear like magic. "Yes," she whispered back. And in that moment, Adie understood something she couldn't name, that even in a city choked by war and soot, even in a life scraped thin by poverty, there were places where voices could travel through silence, where love could echo even when spoken softly. They didn't need much after that. They just sat on the cathedral steps, sharing the biscuits from Adie's satchel, watching the pigeons. It was 1958, and London still bore the scars of the war. Cracked, faded posters and the lingering scent of coal and damp brick. Adie had pleaded with her mother to take her back to St. Paul's Cathedral, to the whispering wall that had spoken to her once before. Her mother had her doubts, but Adie's insistence was quite an unwavering, and so they boarded the red bus, coat buttoned tight against the drizzle, and rode through the city winding streets, past milkmen and newspaper boys, past bomb sites turned into gardens, until the dome of the cathedral rose before them like a memory. Inside, the hush was immediate. The stone seemed to hold its breath, and the filtered light through the stained glass painted the marble in muted color. Adie stepped forward and pressed her ear to the cold wall. She expected her mother's voice, but what came through was something else, soft, distant, and not quite of this world. It wasn't a word at first, but a breath, a hush that curled around her like the morning fog, but warmer somehow. Then faintly a whisper, "You are not forgotten." Adie blinked. She looked around the gallery, but her mother hadn't spoken. Her mother was gazing down into the nave, lost in her own thoughts. The whisper came again, clearer this time, as if the wall itself remembered something Adie had never known. "You carry more than letters, child. You are carrying light." Her heart thumped. She didn't know what it meant, not yet, but it settled inside her like a seed, something sacred, something waiting. And as they rode the bus home, Adie watched the city with new eyes. The soot-streaked buildings, the ration queues, the grey that clung to everything. It all seemed less heavier now, and there's something behind. Something was listening, and maybe, just maybe, the world had whispered to her because it knew she would answer. The city had quietened. The hum of the traffic softened to a distant lull, and the cathedral's bells, once echoing through the shadows, had fallen silent. Adie lay asleep on the settee, her book, The Whispering Wall of St. Paul, still open beside her. Her mother told her it was time to go to bed. Adie's mind still tangled in her dreams. Once in bed, she gazed out at the sky, stretched wide across the velvet dark. Stars blinked above her like secrets too distant to reach. She stared upwards, her thoughts drifting between fear and wonder. Had it all been a dream? Had the walls spoken to her? Did the city listen? One star flickered brighter than the rest. Adie whispered into the dark, "I'll be back. I'm not done." Then she closed her eyes, letting the night hold her gently as London dreamed around her. And there, just beyond the edge of the window frame, something shimmered. Not light, not shadow, something in between. A figure stood on the rooftop across the narrow lane, cloaked in silvery mist, wings folded like pages of an unread book. Not quite visible and not quite imagined. The angel didn't glow, it listened, its gaze was turned towards Adie's window, as if it had heard the whispers she had spoken to the stars. "We're not done." The angel didn't move, it didn't need to. Its presence was enough. A quiet, watchful angel looking over Adie, who once heard the city speak. And as Adie drifted deeper into her sleep, the angel remained, not to protect her from danger, but to witness her becoming. The angel had watched her for many nights, not for miracles, but for the way she kept going, the way she stitched herself back together with thread that no one else could see. It saw the way she looked out the window, not searching for answers. She still believed that the world still existed beyond her flat. It noticed how she spoke to God as if it was an old friend, how she forgave people who hurt her, and how she dared to dream even when the dreams felt too big for her heart.
My baby loves me